Thank you once again, Gus, and to the representatives of the Warsaw Security Forum General Partners for their remarks. It is now my distinct honor to introduce our next session, a high-level panel discussion organized in partnership with the Munich Security Conference titled Transatlantic or Transactional, the Future of US-Europe Security Cooperation. Our moderator for this discussion is His Excellency Ambassador Christoph Heusgen, Chairman of the Munich Security Conference, who will guide us through what promises to be an insightful and timely dialogue. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Heusgen to the stage.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It looks like it's evening, but it's morning. Wonderful to be here again in Warsaw. Warsaw Security Forum is the very best, well, maybe Munich, but it's very, very good conference. So thanks for being here with a wonderful, wonderful panel. Let me briefly introduce Congressman Jason Crow from the House of Representatives. He represents Colorado's 6th Congressional District, serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and House Foreign Affairs Committee, on which he is the ranking Democrat of the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee. As part of the active duty Army, he served in the US Army's 82nd Airborne Division and the Elite 75th Ranger Regiment, deploying to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And the reason why he's here in Warsaw is because he has a safe seat back home in Colorado and will win re-election. So wonderful, wonderful, Jason.
You weren't supposed to say that.
Oh, sorry, I take it back. No, it's... Then we have Hanno Pevkur, the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Estonia. He assumed office of Minister of Defense during turbulent times in July 22, month after Russian invasion of Ukraine, and showed excellent leadership in these trying times. Before that, he held several prestigious ministerial positions, such as Minister of Interior, Minister of Justice, and Minister of Social Affairs. So, welcome, Hanno. Thank you. And then Anna, Isabel, I hope I say it correct, Xavier? Semi, yes. The Secretary of State for National Defense of Portugal. She's serving this position since April 24. Before, she was Associate Professor, International Relations, European Studies. She has been on the board of the Portuguese Atlantic Commission. She served 15 to 17 as Deputy Policy Director of the Ministry of Defense. And she's an analyst in international affairs in RTP, the National Public Television. Welcome, Anna Isabel. And then Tytti Tuppurainen, leader of the Finnish Social Democratic Parliamentary Group in Finland, member of parliament since 2011, so right after kindergarten, and she brings with her extensive knowledge of Finnish and European matters, speaks fluent German. Currently she is the leader of the Social Democratic Parliamentary Group in the Finnish Parliament, part of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. And from 2019 and 2023, she was Minister for European Affairs and Ownership Steering, whatever that is. But Tytti, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the...
It's state-owned companies, the
okay,
second portfolio.
Yes, okay. So we learned something already. Welcome here. And of course, we are in exciting times. We have soon American elections. We'll see what comes out of that. We have the Ukraine war continuing. We see the strong will and intention to fight and to support Ukraine, particularly in the Baltic countries. We have some alarming, I think, results of election in other countries in Europe, including regional elections in my country, with regard to the support of of Ukraine. At the same time, we have a new European Commission with very ambitious program, with the Estonian former Prime Minister now becoming the first Prime Minister to hold the position of High Representative. We have Mr. Kubilius, another Baltic, who is now first-time Commissioner for Defense. So there are a lot of things to discuss, but first, since we have the ratio 3-1 or even 4-1, I think it's only fair to give the American first to start your view on things. How do you see transatlantic relations right now? What is your view? What happens after the elections? Pivot to Asia, and how do you look to what we are doing in Europe on defense and security?
Well, thank you. Thank you to the Warsaw Security Forum for having me here. This is gonna be my last trip abroad before the final election push in the United States. Nobody knows how it's going to go. If anyone tells you they know how it's going to go, they're not telling either themselves or you the truth there. It's a very tight election, obviously a very consequential election. I don't need to tell this crowd that. I know you all pay very close attention to it. But the issues. Back in the United States and how we view this, there is very much a contest right now back in America on two very competing views of national security and foreign policy and how we view the transatlantic partnership. There is a very active and ongoing debate of global engagement versus isolationism and populism. I mean, that's something that I know many of you are also dealing with in your own countries. But it's a real debate, and it's a big debate, and it's one that is probably more a part of the election cycle this cycle than any other election that I have seen in my time in politics. The issue of global security, national security, and what our role in the world is. So I'd say it's probably at least the top three, if not higher, in terms of issues. The things that we're talking more specifically about on the campaigns and more broadly in Washington, open questions, I'll say, about the transatlantic partnership. One is on the issue of co-production and what that looks like. There's an internal discussion about our export control and trade sanctions. America is very protective over our defense technology and our permitting and licensing of that technology. We know, policymakers know, that we have to become comfortable with lower fences around that technology and greater collaboration. There's just no way, we know there's no way that we have the production capability ourselves to keep up with the need. So we're going to have to figure out how we can create more multilateral and bilateral relationships and export control fences for allow us to do things like we've done with AUKUS and other things, Diana with NATO, similar situations. That's number one. Number two, having a better conversation around intelligence sharing, and a big part of that actually is discussions around technology and communications infrastructure. And I know you've heard this from America before, but Huawei investments, 5G investments, and your telecommunications infrastructure really do limit our ability to share intelligence with many of your services in your countries. Right? You cannot allow Chinese investment in telecommunications infrastructure and then also expect the level of cooperation and intelligence sharing that I think we will need to have going forward. And then the third is related to China as well. We are spending collectively hundreds of billions of dollars to defend Ukraine. We cannot do that and also ignore the fact that China is supporting this war and that Russia cannot do what it's currently doing in Ukraine. They cannot do it without China's substantial support right now. And we just can't have that split screen anymore where we ignore that component of this conflict, and that requires, I think, very serious discussions.
Oh, thank you very much for this. Hanno, when you listen to this, when you think about the upcoming elections, what are your thoughts about European defense, and how do you see the need for stronger European defense in Estonia? What are you doing on that issue?
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Warsaw, for bringing me back here. And actually, I want to start to replying or echoing what Jason said, that when nobody knows how the election result will be. So of course we know it's a 50-50 situation, and Trump or Harris will win. So we know how it goes. There are two candidates left in the rally, but nevertheless, when you Christoph asked that what we are doing, first I believe it's unprecedented that in Estonia we will introduce a security tax or a war tax, or however you call it. But the point is that everyone in the society will contribute a bit more. So it's 2 + 2 + 2 tax, 2% VAT, 2% of income, and 2% of profits for entrepreneurs. So it's a huge burden. When you think like this, that you want to introduce in Germany 2% additional VAT and 2% of profits for the entrepreneurs, well, it might be a slight turbulence in German society, but everybody understands in Estonia that we have to do more. We are investing into defense at the moment 3.4%. We will go to 3.7 in 26. We are investing from this money around 52 to 54% only to capabilities, so the capability development. There will be a couple of years where we invest around 25% of our defense budget only to ammunition. So we are doing a lot. But also we see that even when we are doing a lot, and Poland is investing 4.7, as Minister said, we truly believe that all of us in NATO have to do more. So we have to go not only to 2%, but we have to go to 2.5, maybe even 3%, because this gap what we have from last 30 years is just too big. And we have, otherwise we cannot have, because I will just give you one number or two numbers. In last 25 years, European Union countries increased their defense spendings for 43%. The same time, Russia increased the defense spendings 592%. So 43 comparing to 592. And this 43 doesn't take into account the inflation. So coming now to US and European cooperation and all that, just the final maybe remarks before giving or handing over the mics to colleagues. I believe that, at the moment, doesn't matter, is it Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, the point is in unity. And for me, the unity at the moment is not an option. The unity in the alliance is a necessity. So we have to keep that track and keep that in mind, that it's not about, that do we want to do something differently or does somebody wants to do something differently. It's about the unity, because stronger we are. The only option to be together and to deter Russia is to show the unity.
Thank you very much. Of course, I totally agree with the point to unity. Now, you said that to raise 2% on VAT, 2% on different issues, if you would say this would be a slight turbulence, maybe in Germany, I tell you it would be political suicide. How would be in Portugal? I mean, Portugal is far away from Ukraine in European perspective. On the other hand, you're a member of NATO. And if you ask the Baltics, if Putin wins in Ukraine, Baltics will be next. I mean, this is what Baltics, I think, basically expect. If Russia, Putin turns to the Baltic countries, it's NATO, it's Portugal. How do you explain that to your people? How do you succeed as Secretary of Defense to get to the capabilities to get to 2%? How difficult is that?
Thank you so much for the question. Morning, Christopher. Morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Warsaw Security Forum, for hosting me for the very first time. Hope it's not the last. Well, in Portugal, we truly believe that defense is not an expense, it's investment. And we also are aware that from Lisbon to Kyiv, it's 3,500 kilometers. but there is no distance when we are talking about security. Governments change, but security concerns do not. And Portugal is truly committed with Ukraine. In fact, President Zelensky visited Portugal, and we signed a new cooperation agreement that boosts our commitment towards Ukraine. We are, as you mentioned, a member of NATO, but more than that, we are a founding member of NATO. And in what concerns Ukraine, we are not just boosting our cooperation in terms of finance or humanitarian, but we are also within the United States-led Ukraine Defense Contact Group. We belong to this contact group, and we train Ukrainian technicians in Portugal in terms of our Air Force Capability Coalition. We co-lead autonomous systems line within the Maritime Capability Coalition, and we also train Ukrainian military combat cars in Portugal within the Armored Coalition. But Portugal believes that we do much more when we talk about Ukraine. Not only we are reinforcing our presence in the eastern flank, and when we have now more troops in Lithuania, Romania or Slovakia, we are talking about a stronger commitment of Portugal in the eastern flank, but we are also doing much more. Portugal bridges Europe, Africa and America in countering the Russians' influence in Africa in particular. So when we fight against Russia, Portugal is in Africa, in the Portuguese-speaking countries, namely in Mozambique, in trying to counter disinformation and all the impact that Russia has in Africa. So how do we convince our Portuguese society that we must build up the best capability in efforts? Just showing them, for instance, that Ukrainian community is now the second biggest community in Portugal. And not only since 24th February 2022, but since the late 90s. Our Ukrainian community is quite strong, very well integrated, they speak the language. And Portugal, well, I think that everybody knows, we are famously known by hosting people and welcoming them in a very warm way. So that's how we convince people. This is something that really binds us together, this commitment towards security, towards defense. And no matter how distant we are from Kyiv, we are all Ukrainians. We are all committed with helping Ukraine as long as it takes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for this, and also thanks for looking at the so-called global south, what has to be done there, and Portugal indeed does a fantastic job there. Tytti, I could ask you easy questions about, Finnish defense and your conscription army, you're becoming NATO, but that would be too easy. So, as you were a European minister, how do you look at Brussels? How do you look at the new Commission? How do you see Brussels playing a more important role on defense? We have Mr. Kubilius now as Defense Commissioner. How hopeful are you that something substantial will come out of Brussels on European defense?
I'm hopeful, thank you, Christoph. But first of all, let me say that I'm happy to be here in Poland. Is this the new Brussels? Because this is already my second time in Warsaw this fall. So many friends here. I have a very short but 4 points list for Brussels and Europe. And I start by saying that Brussels and the EU need to convince our transatlantic partner, that is the USA, that it pays to stay in Europe. It is reciprocity, and it's in the US interest to be here engaged, securing our continental peace. It is not obvious. Before the First World War, USA was reluctant. Before the Second World War, USA was reluctant. But now we have to show that it is more efficient to be committed to Europe. It saves blood and treasure. Because if Europe is subdued by Russia, it would encourage other autocracies in the world, and it would mean that the United States would be confronted also elsewhere. So let's keep together, and that's the number one issue that we need to do. While we are building our own defense capabilities, it doesn't mean that we are turning our backs to the United States, in the contrary. Now, secondly, we have to be committed in our support to Ukraine. We cannot allow ourselves any kind of fatigue anywhere, Not in Thüringen, not in Germany, elsewhere, not in Finland, not in Portugal, nowhere. Because Ukraine is defending us, and we have to make sure that Russia doesn't win, because whoever controls the European heartland controls the world island of Eurasia, and who controls the world island of Eurasia controls the world. And of course, we don't want to give that right to the autocracies, China and Russia and others. So my call here is that we have to give away our principle of helping Ukraine for as long as it takes. I think it's fundamentally wrong to think that way. So the EU must think that we need to help Ukraine as much as it takes. You understand it? There's a different strategic approach. We need to lift the restrictions and make sure that we help Ukraine as much as it takes. And the third point is that, yes, Christoph, we need to move on in our defense industry initiatives and make it something real. We have the money, we have the expertise, but we don't have the market. It's not coordinated, it is too splintered, it's too fragmented, there are too many overlaps. So we need to create a genuine European defense single market, which means that we need to give away the national protectionism in European defense market. But we also need to avoid European level protectionism when it comes to defense market. We need to work in close collaboration in defense industry with the United States, but also with the UK, with Norway, with Israel, with Turkey, with Korea, and so on. So it is all about networks in the defense industry. We have all what it takes, we have the finances, but now the commissioner responsible for defense, the Lithuanian Kubilius, has to make it something real and also run the European Defense Agency. And lastly, my fourth point. As a politician, I call for a new social contract for Europe. Now it's the perfect timing for this because Ursula von der Leyen's Commission is just starting. We need a new social contract in Europe, which includes the component of defense and security. We need to be able to communicate to our people, to our voters, to the normal citizens, that while we invest in their healthcare, their social security, their pensions, we also need to take care of the defense investments and our security investments. Otherwise, it will be either or, and we will lose as decision makers. It has to be both and. So the new social contract for Europe, which includes security and defense.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you for your strong statements. We'll turn now to you. Please ask questions, or one question, introduce yourself and say to whom your question is directed. I see somebody there. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Melissa Murphy. I'm from the United States, and my question's for Congressman Crow. Congressman, you spoke about the importance of intelligence sharing through the Transatlantic Partnership and some of the challenges there. Your Ranger element experience background is a great example of a functional piece of government and defense that persists through partisan leadership. Aside from eliminating Yahweh technology, what are your recommendations for achieving target state intelligence sharing in the coming years?
Thank you. It's a wonderful question. You know, there's a lot of discussion in this group in NATO about meeting the 2% requirements, a lot of discussion around how do you marshal troop levels, because a lot of countries are going through expansion and trying to meet recruiting goals, a lot of discussion around weapon systems and long-range fires and armor units. But what there isn't a lot of discussion about, and this is just as a critical component, and that is you can have these formations, you can have these units, but unless you have the communications infrastructure and the intelligence infrastructure and the targeting infrastructure, none of it works. And right now, within NATO, that is primarily US infrastructure. And the United States is looking at having to manage conflicts in the Indo-Pacific, in Africa, in the Middle East, and other places. So I think one of the discussions that Europe needs to have more is what does a European intelligence and communication infrastructure look like that's not separate from the US umbrella, but could add additional capacity in the event that we are unable to bring our full capacity to the table if we are managing 2 or 3 other different contingency operations. There needs to be more European independence on communications and intelligence. And I think that's a discussion that's worth having just as much as the 2% levels, what systems they're purchasing, and co-production as well.
Thank you, Congressman. Next, yes, please.
Hello. Jacek Karczewski, I'm from Poland. I would like to ask a question. Both in this panel and the previous speakers spoke about the need for Europe or European partners to understand that not only the local, let's say, Ukrainian conflict is important, but to have a global outlook, see also the risks coming out of Asia, China notably, and also other regions, the Middle East. With the US, the solution, or one of the solutions to that is that the US has a large number of bases around the world and also a presence stemming from its strong navy, notably the aircraft carriers. Now, would this new kind of approach from the European partners also see European partners having bases around the world and having also enlarging its naval capability, notably having much more aircraft carriers and being present around the world? Thank you.
So aircraft carriers built by Brussels, by Mr. Kubilius. Tytti, when is the first one ready?
Well, I would say no thanks for aircraft carriers, because they might be good in somewhere safe place on Earth, but maybe imagine a situation where our adversary would have hypersonic missiles. Now, what can we do with aircraft carriers then? So we need to learn from the war that is ongoing in Ukraine and adopt best possible technologies. It means artillery. It is needed, much needed in Ukraine. It means long-range missiles and also autonomous systems. That is what we need to invest in. But I generally believe that Europe should be a good partner for the United States in the Indo-Pacific area. And actually, we have credibility there. We have credibility there. I think France, there is France in the South Pacific. And UK has great partnerships also in the area. And let us not forget that European Union is a great economic power. So we can use our leverage when it comes to cooperation and make our footmark a domain in the area that is of mutual interest.
Yes, and Isabel earlier said about Portugal being very active in Africa, doing so, and I think more can be done also with European missions there. There was a question by a lady, yes, 10th row.
Thank you very much. Katarina Maternova, I'm the EU ambassador in Ukraine. We have 2 countries that acceded to NATO long before the European Union, and one that was long in the European Union before it came into NATO. And my question is, as we are launching the EU process that is always viewed as slow and bureaucratic, etc., and we are doing it in a war, do you think it's realistic to see Ukraine in the European Union without being a member of NATO?
Who would like to respond to that?
Well,
yes.
I would. Yeah, thank you, Katarina. We will have later a longer discussion, so we can discuss it also later on. But I don't see that these are somehow, binded or somehow linked to each other. So there are 2 different ways. One is for the European Union membership and one is for the NATO membership. Of course, we all understand that the only security guarantee for Ukraine can be NATO membership. So we all understand that. So because any other option might be good, but not good enough. Regarding the EU membership, well, we all understand and know that there is a process to that and toward that. And of course, Estonia is supporting both of these ways, being it EU membership or NATO membership. But definitely for Ukraine, it is important to show the light at the end of the tunnel, or in the end of the tunnel, that the both ways are available for them, and rather sooner than later.
Thank you.
May I just add something,
yes,
please? I would just add that enlargement is never a promise, but a process. In this case, I would say that we are committed with the process, and we are all very optimistic about Ukraine being a member of the European Union and also of NATO. It's not a question of trade-offs, but joint effort. But I'm confident that this process will be in a collaborative effort between all the members and also the allies.
Tytti, Finnish experience.
Yeah, we were in the European Union long before we became members of NATO, and of course we wanted to be in NATO because it is the ultimate security guarantor because of the United States powers and also UK powers and so on. But sometimes I get the feeling that we are a little bit too pessimistic when it comes to EU's ability to contribute to security. I would like to argue that the EU is also a credible security provider. We've done a lot in defense policies in the EU, and the strategic compass should become something real, and it is becoming real. Think of that we now have a defense commissioner, a designated defense commissioner in the EU. So sooner or later, there will be a real, European pillar of NATO, and it is built on the European Union. That's what I believe. And we also have the Article 42.7, which is the solidarity clause in the EU. Let's not forget that. So either or, what matters is that the Ukrainians will get what they deserve, and that is the membership in the EU and in NATO. Both, but in which order, let's see.
Thank you. Yes, first row.
Thank you very much. I will have a question to Congressman Crow. My name is Katya Dekanoidze. I'm the member of the Parliament of Georgia. And my country is also occupied by Russia, 20%. And it all started in 2008. We all remember that. So, and Georgians, Ukrainians, we're just looking forward to US elections because, for my people and our people, it's so much important. And the question to you, Congressman, so what do you think and how you can explain? We all know what Trump is suggesting, right? Regarding NATO, regarding dormant NATO, regarding foreign policy, etc. So what is Kamala Harris suggesting? I mean, regarding Ukraine, it would be more similar to President Biden's approach to Ukraine, or it would be something else, more tougher, and maybe something new. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple of different parts of that question. First off, I mentioned in the beginning this issue of the ongoing debate about America's role in the world as happening in our domestic politics, and that's a reflection of a couple of factors. One is we just finished our longest war, America's longest war, our war on terror. It was 20 years. It cost us over $2 trillion. Tens of thousands of American lives wounded, killed, hundreds of thousands of others around the world. So there is a reluctance in America for us to engage in conflict. And what you see that taking shape in some of the discourse around Ukraine. I'm obviously a very, very firm Ukraine supporter, but I find myself having to make the case as to why this is different and why this is in our national security interests. But that it's something in our politics that we're having to address. That's one. And then more broadly, what I would say is we're undergoing a shift, I think, in our paradigm of engagement with the world. And I think that's because the world is undergoing a shift in terms of where the power base is, right? And the power lies a lot less in nation states and in governments, and it becomes more diffused because of technology. Information flows differently. people consume their information in very different ways, and that dictates or should dictate how we engage with that information flow and with other people. And I've long been pushing for more people-to-people engagement rather than state-to-state engagement, because I think if you want longer-term relationships and longer-term security, it should be a more people-centered security. And our State Department and our Defense Department and our intelligence community is not designed to do that right now. It's still a kind of a 20th century method of engagement. So we need to reform our systems to communicate and engage with the people of Georgia, with the people of Ukraine, as opposed to just the governments alone. So that's number two. And then number three, with regard to Vice President Harris, and I'm not speaking for her or her campaign or her administration, but she is somebody that believes in global engagement, that believes that America is not perfect, that we've certainly made a lot of mistakes, but we are a force for good in the world. We can be, and we aspire to be, and that when we are not engaged, there are consequences to that for the American people and for others, and that we should learn, and we should do so from a place of humility. But engagement matters, and it's in America's interest to do so, right? And we always talk about the issue of Ukraine. And what I say, and Vice President Harris and others have said, is this is not charity, right? Americans are not giving charity to Ukraine, because the Ukrainians don't want charity, number one. They want freedom, and they're willing to fight for it on their own. They just need assistance in doing that. But we have a couple of very specific interests. One is we have over 80,000 troops in Europe, so a safe and prosperous Europe is in their interests. We have hundreds of thousands of Americans who live in Europe, so securing those Americans is in our interest. Securing our food supply and our economic trading partners, because Europe is obviously our main trading partner, is in our interest. Helping decimate the Russian war machine is in our interest, and we've done that. All of these things we have done for about 3% of our annual defense budget, which for Americans is a hell of a good deal. So making sure we're communicating those interests is really important as well.
Thank you. We are running out of time. We have one more, maybe two more questions.
Thank you. I'm Oliver Rolofs from Munich, Germany, and my question goes to Secretary Xavier and Minister Pevkur. We talk a lot about money, and we know that defense efforts cost a lot of money. And I learned that the taxpayer in Estonia have to carry a part of the burden. And I just wonder, because we have a very potent industry in Europe, and to what extent also the private sector could be more engaged or should be more engaged to carry the defense burden, maybe in terms of setting up own, let's say, defense funds also. What do you think about that? Thank you.
Okay, very quickly. First, the easiest way is to pay taxes, as the law says. Secondly, when there is a possibility to make also donations, everyone can do. But still, when I take also the Estonian example, about the security tax, 2 + 2 + 2 formula for at least 3 years, what we have agreed, is a huge burden also for entrepreneurs. It's not an easy task, and we've achieved that most of the entrepreneurs understand why it is important, but because Ukraine is also fighting our war, and we all want to live in peace and prosperity. And we know that the river Narva, which is the border river, is the river of civilization, or the border of civilization. That on the one side you have the respect for human rights and freedom of speech, etc. And on the other side, you have autocratism, and you don't have any respect to international law. So this is the difference, and when everybody in the society, it's not only about the companies, it's not only about entrepreneurs. Everybody has to have the feeling that, I want to wake up in the morning in a free society. And this is the difference. I want to have, freedom to fly to Berlin without any visa. I want to have the economic ties, etc. So this is the point, and there is no other details or no other things to discuss. So just be a good citizen and good entrepreneur to your country and to your citizens, society.
Thank you
Isabel,
so much
briefly, yes.
for your question. For Portugal, it's not a question of how much money do you spend, but how do you spend it? And that's why we strive for strategic autonomy, and we strive for collaborative projects, for pooling and sharing, for burden sharing. It's not important the label that you have, but that's why within the EU and within NATO we strive for defense-related projects and programs that are already existing, such as PESCO, EDF, other projects or initiatives that really boost our ability to work together and to actually find strategic autonomy, not just as an ambition, but something that really can be accomplished together with all our allies and the other member states.
Thank you very much. We have run out of time. Let me just summarize. Tytti, thanks very much for what you have said with Ukraine, not as long as it takes, as much as it takes, and also thanks for the proposal of a new social contract for the European Union. And then Isabel, thanks for what you have said, also with Portugal's commitment to Ukraine, what you say about the global engagement in the global south. And then, Defense Minister, I like your idea about the slight turbulence, 2 + 2 + 2. I invite you to Germany and make that proposal there. I think you should make the point what you said. We all want to wake up in a free society in the morning. So I think that was very strong. And then finally, Congressman, wish you good luck when you go back. And although I'm a neutral moderator here, I think that I understand the reluctance of foreign engagement in the US after the experience. I feel encouraged from what you said also about Kamala Harris. She was in Munich and she also committed at that time on stage to a global engagement from the United States, and I hope that this will continue with the most important partner we have. So thank you all on stage. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the Warsaw Security Forum. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful for the Munich Security Conference to partner with the Warsaw Security Forum. Thanks you to all of you.